Are you looking to transfer your individual tracks from GarageBand iOS into another platform? Well, if you are, this video is for you. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete, and this is Studio Live Today, where I help you create, record, and release your best music. And if you're using GarageBand on your iPhone or your iPad, you probably find it quite simple to transfer or to copy over your project files or your final mixes, your waves or your M4A files from one device to another, or even onto your Mac or your PC so that you can use it, you can release it, you can do what you want. However, the one thing that is tricky is to actually transfer individual tracks, or what we call stems, individual tracks from your GarageBand project as individual files so that you could import them into another platform, another computer, another digital audio workstation. So in this video, I'm going to show you two different methods that we have for transferring stems or individual tracks from GarageBand iOS into another application. So let's dive in and take a look now. So here we are in GarageBand, and I'm going to be using my track 6 and 8, which I've just finished the mixing and mastering process. If you want to catch up on that whole series, I'll link it up there and down there. But this song has 13 different tracks in it. So we're going to export the stems of this. I could just export the song or the project, and I've got other videos, which again, I will link in the description that show you how to do that. But we want to specifically in this video focus on stems or individual tracks. Now, the first method that we're going to use is to solo each track and then export as an individual WAV file. Yes, it is a little bit annoying, and I said at the start that it's not a very good process. It's a bit frustrating and fiddly to do, but it's the best way to do it. However, before we do that, what I'm going to do is come back to my songs here, and I'm going to select and tap on this and duplicate. So down the bottom here, I'm going to tap duplicate so that we've got a new version of this song. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this to 6 and 8, and then we'll put a dash in there and call this stems, just so that we're not going to mess with our original mixing and mastering, because we're going to need to do a few things in this process as well to actually change the sound. Because the other thing you're probably thinking at this point is, do you export stems with effects or without? Now, it depends on the purpose, depends on what you want to do. Most of the time, most people will want to export without effects, because the idea is you want to bring them into another platform and add your effects over there. So I'm going to show you the difference, but I'll be using that method here. I'll be removing the effects before we actually export this. So let's jump back into this stems version now. And the first thing that we need to do is solo our first track. So we're soloing the drum track here now. Now, I talked about effects, and what we would need to do on each of these tracks, if we don't want any of those, is to tap on our button here to go into our plugins and effects and EQ, and we want to remove the master effects down the bottom here, the echo and the reverb. We then want to go to plugins and EQ, and we want to turn all the lights off. So make sure that we have absolutely zero processing on this particular track before it actually goes. We want our panning also to be dead center, so that when we export this track, it's not going to actually be panned, because GarageBand will export these as stereo files. If you do want them panned, then go for it. But ideally, you want these panned up the middle, because you'll do your panning in whatever other application you move them into. So let's just play these drums now and make sure that that has all been done there. So there you go, we've got our fairly clean sort of drum sound. Now, because of the way some of these virtual instruments particularly work, the drummer will have its own sort of processing on there. The actual kit, the actual virtual instruments have some EQ and they have some compression in the way they're recorded. There's no real way around that with virtual instruments, because it's just the way it goes. But we don't have any of that additional processing that we've added onto this track after the fact. So that is good to go. We're going to tap on My Songs now to go back over to our original view here. What we want to do now is rename this project file. So I'm going to tap on there, and I'm going to add to the end of this the track number. So I'm going to put 01 for the track number, and then the track type or the name. So I'm going to put stems 01 drums. And what this is going to do is, when we export this and then all of the rest of our files soloed in there, then we're going to be able to quickly and easily identify them, line them back up in wherever we export them to. So now we're ready to actually share this file. We'll tap select. We'll select on that one and we'll tap share in the bottom left corner. We now want to share the song file. And again, this is just that single track, but it'll be a song file here. Uncompressed wave, 44.1, 24-bit. We'll tap share in the top right corner. And that is going to ask us where to. We'll tap save to files because we want to save this in a separate folder, which I should have set up beforehand, but we'll set that up in just a moment because we want to dump all of these files out into a single folder to make sure that we have all 13 tracks ready to go, and then we can transfer those over to our PC, our Mac. We can zip them up and put them on Dropbox, whatever we want to do. However we want to get these stems to someone else or to another platform, we can do. So we'll let this export and then we'll jump back in and I'll show you the next step. So here we go. It has finished exporting. It's now asking us where to put it now. Because I didn't set up that folder beforehand, I'm just going to tap add, and it's going to pop it straight here in our GarageBand folder. So there it is up the top there. Now, what I should have done is created a separate folder here using the Files app, which I'll do in a moment so that we can line all of these up. What I'll just do is let's just do one more just so that you can get the feel for this. I won't make you watch me do all 13, but we'll tap back in here into the project, and what we'll do is let's select the next instrument here. Now, this time, we're going to unsolo that and solo our bass track. We're going to do the same thing with our effects. We're going to come in here and make sure that we don't have any of these on. Whoops, we're in the wrong track. So we'll turn off any of our effects that we have on this track. Plugins and EQ are off. Our master effects are 0 on the track. Let's just play it back and make sure it's sounding like we think it should. And it is. Now, keep in mind with things like an amp track or with other vocals and guitar sims and things, you're going to have to make a call at some point as to how much processing is on there, because this is obviously going through the amp sim. So we can adjust all of the effects that we have on the amp sim here. So it depends whether you want to have like a DI, like a direct input signal of your bass, or whether you want to have an amped signal. So you can go in and change this and make it a clean signal and do more processing or less processing. But I'm going to pretend that this is like a real amp. So for our guitars and our bass and things like this, I'm just going to leave it as an amped signal, and then we can just add processing and mixing when we get to our other one. So that is done now. We'll go back to My Songs and pop back to here. Now we want to rename the track again. So you can see this gets a little bit fiddly, but you will thank yourself and me for doing this afterwards with all these file names going everywhere. Hit done. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to select, we're going to tap on that, hit share in the bottom left, tap on song, tap on share. It's going to go away and ask us where to put it, save to files. It's going to export, and then we'll have this second WAV file here. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how to create a folder in there, and then I'll do the rest, and I'll show you the end result once we're done. Okay, that one is done, and it takes about 2 minutes per file for a song of this length. So yes, again, clunky process. Wish there was a better way. There isn't. So now we'll tap on add again to add in this next file, and there it is. So we've now got these two WAV files. They're both 63 meg WAV files ready to go, and these are the ones that we can start using. Now, I did mention that we could create our own folder here, so I'm just going to go back here, and we'll go into the Files app because we can't create folders from within GarageBand. But if we come in here, we go on my iPad into GarageBand, then we can actually create a new folder, and it's slightly hidden here, but we need to scroll down, just pull down on your screen there, and then in the top left we can create a folder here. So let's tap create folder, and we'll just call this 6 and 8. And we'll call this stems, because this is what we've got. These are what are commonly called stems, individual tracks that we have here. We can now select and move those two files that we've already created. So we'll just tap on those there, and we'll tap and drag those into this folder. And so now when we hit done in the top right, we'll come in here. We're going to have a nice clean layout. And again, if you do this now, you're going to thank me later because it's going to be easier to do. So let's go back to GarageBand and go back into our project file here. So yep, there's our folder. We'll do one more because I'll just show you how we select the right folder to put it in. And I also wanted to show you a virtual instrument track as well, just to show you that the process is not actually that much different, whether we've got a drummer track, an audio recorder track, or a virtual instrument track. So here again, we will solo this track. We'll tap on our effects at the top here. We'll drop all of our master effects off. We'll go to plugins and EQ. We'll turn off anything that we have there. Let's just hit play and make sure this is sounding the way we think it should. And again, there's some natural reverb, there's some natural EQ, there's some natural compression because it's a virtual instrument. They've actually got the sample in there with that on there already. So we can't do anything about that, and we probably don't want to because you don't have to recreate the sound and just use a really dull piano. So this is ready to go now. We'll tap My Songs and back out to here. Let's rename it again. Yes, you can already see that if you've got a 32 track song, this is going to be a pretty painful process, but again, only way to do it. And it's worthwhile. If you really do want to have this and you want the flexibility to do it, you'll commit half an hour to an hour to do this, but then you've got those tracks forever and you can remix them, you can do whatever you want with them. So here we go, stems 03 piano, we'll hit done. There it is now. We'll select it, we'll tap it, we'll share it. You know this part. We'll hit song, we'll hit share, and off it goes. It asks us where. We'll tap save to files. It'll export this track again, and I'll return once we get to the next selection just to show you how to put it into that folder that we just created. So here we go. All we need to do now is tap on our 6 and 8 stems folder, hit add, and it's going to pop that file into that folder. So you can see now that if we go to that folder, we've got these 3 different stem files in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of these and get all of those different stems saved and into that folder. But before I do that, I'm going to jump into another file and show you the second method for exporting stems, which is not actually that much easier. It's about the same, but it's just a different way to do it that may work for some of your projects. So let's jump in and show that now. Okay, to show the second method, we're going to use a different project. We're going to use my song, Never to Blame. So we'll tap on the project here, Never to Blame version 4. Now, the reason I'm using this is that it has less tracks. This is only a 7-track song here, so it's going to be a lot easier to manage. Or is it only 6? It's only 6 tracks, so it's going to be even easier to manage. So we could use the same method we used before by soloing each of these tracks, by removing the effects, and then by exporting each one. But I'm going to actually do something different this time around. So we'll go back to my songs. We'll do our duplicate first. So we'll tap there, we'll tap duplicate. We've got this one up the top here now. We'll tap on the name and we'll call this Never to Blame Stems version 2, just so we know this is the second way of doing this that we're going to be showing here. So we'll go into our Never to Blame. Now this version, and in fact both of these, require a lot of space on your iPad or your iPhone because they're duplicating and they're copying and they're adding WAV files in. So yes, make sure you've got plenty of space before you start either of these processes or you're going to run into troubles on your iPad or your iPhone. So we're going to tap on Never to Blame. Now, what we're going to do this time is we're going to use a different method. We're going to use a merge option to actually create each of these files that's going to sit in the project file at the end. So we won't be exporting the stems or exporting WAV files. We'll be changing the project file to have all WAV files in here, all merged WAV files, and then we'll actually be extracting those afterwards. So it's a different way around it. So what we need to do this is we need to tap on each of these files. Now, this one's going to be even trickier because we've got automation on the volume on these. So if we leave that automation on, it will stay as an automated track. So I'm going to actually leave it on. You could take it off, but then you would literally just have to re-automate it. So I'm going to export these stems with automated volume, but I am going to remove our effects as we did before. So I'm going to do this all at once here just to get it all done. So we're going to come into each track. We're going to remove everything, and yes, there is no easier way to do this than this. Actually, let's remove all these first and then we'll do the master effects afterwards. So we're removing all of our effects, all of our EQ, and leveling out each of these tracks, which will make it sound worse, obviously, to start with, but then it will be better eventually. So there's all of our plugins gone. We'll come out here, we'll go to our master effects at the bottom here, we'll drop all these to 0, and this will just mean that we don't have to do any more of this sort of work afterwards once we have got our stuff done. So there we go. We've got our 3 guitar tracks here at the top. We've then got our vocals, we've got a bass vocal, and then we've got our Gavin here on our drums. Now, I haven't done a very good job naming any of these tracks, so I'm going to jump in and name these better names just so that we know which one is which when we come out and I show you the next process. All right, our tracks are renamed, and I've just realized one final thing we need to do is to pan all of these center. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to double tap any of these that aren't in the center. It was just those 2 guitars. That's fine. So everything now is set and ready to go. What we're going to now do is we're going to merge each one of these tracks individually to this track. To do that, we tap on the first track here, we tap it, and then we hit the merge button. And then we select just that first track and we tap merge. What this is going to do, it's going to duplicate the song, it's going to merge it, it's going to normalize it, and it's going to create this new track down the bottom here. And I've just realized all that renaming I just did was kind of futile because it renames it audio recorder down the bottom here. So that's all right. We will fix that up as we go along. So let's do guitar 2. We'll tap again. We will tap merge, and then we'll tap on merge at the top here. And what this is doing is it's creating WAV files, and what GarageBand does is it stores these WAV files in its project file. But the problem is that when you have WAV files as they are at the moment, it will be a bunch of tiny WAV files that are all different lengths that all start at different times. Doing it this way means we can actually utilize the files that it stores, those audio files, once we actually dive in. So let's continue doing this now, and you can see why I chose this smaller project to do this action, because it is going to take up, every time it duplicates it, it's recreating the entire project. So I'm going to need to go in and do some deleting afterwards. All right, here's our first 3 tracks. Let's just do a quick bit of renaming. We'll tap, we'll rename that one, and we'll just delete audio recorder. Let's just call it G1. We know what we mean. You don't want to watch me type a bunch of stuff. We'll tap there, we'll rename. We'll call the second one, not surprisingly, G2. And then we'll do the same on the third one. And then we're going to do these final 3 tracks and do the same thing. So we'll delete that. G3, not 2, but 3. All right, so there's our 3 guitar tracks in there as merged tracks. And you'll notice here that they have increased the volume of each of these. So it's normalized the volume up. Let's just solo these. And just out of interest, let's take a listen. I'll make sure I'll have my hand on the volume slider here so it doesn't blast us. Let's just take a listen. So not too bad there. You can hear that they're very unprocessed. They don't sound great because we've removed all of our processing, but that's okay. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. Let's now grab our vocals here. We'll do the same thing here. We're going to merge that one. We're going to select just that track. Just not that one. We've got it soloed on the other one, but it won't actually make any difference. It's just going to leave that solo on there. It merges it. It pops it down the bottom there. Let's do the same for our bass and then our drums. So we'll do this. We'll tap merge. We'll tap merge. And that will duplicate, throw it down the bottom, normalize it. And there's that bass track. You can see it's brought the volume up significantly on that. And then our drums. So any of your virtual instruments, you can do all the same things here. And obviously, once you actually merge these in, you're not going to be able to edit those tracks anymore. And these are all now WAV files. These are all now audio recorder tracks that we can no longer do anything with except for manipulate like we would any other audio track. Let's just unsolo these and rename them before we forget what each of them are. And we're good to go. So there is our 6-track song as just WAV files here. So if we go back to my songs, this is the latest version that it's going to be. And you can see that what it's done here is created all these copies. Every time we've merged it, it's created a copy. And that's so that we don't make a mistake. Because once you merge a track, it goes away. You can't get back to the original version. So we can if we had any of these. But because this is my stems and I've got my original copy there, I'm going to delete them. So we're going to go select. We'll tap all of these to get rid of them. And then we're going to tap delete. Now, when you delete things in GarageBand, the Files app, it doesn't completely delete them. So you also then have to go recently deleted, and then you have to delete all of these as well. All right, so here is our project file. You can see there is slightly bigger than our original file because it's not using any virtual instruments, and every WAV file, even where it's blank, so even the parts of these files where it's silent, it's storing that data as a WAV file. So all of those WAV files are exactly the same length. They go from end to end, and that is super important because that is the only way this method is going to work. So now that we have that done, what I'm going to do is go back to 6 and 8. I'm going to export those other 7 tracks that we have left to go, more than that maybe, 9 tracks, and then I will jump over to the PC, connect up my iPad, and I'll show you how we can transfer these over using a bunch of different methods. All right, that is all done, and I won't pretend that that was a super fun process, but we got there. So here are our stems, our 6 and 8 stems, all 13 tracks, and I realized as I did this, I didn't make the volume at a uniform level. So that's one thing I probably should have done, which is actually normalize those volumes. At this stage, I've got the lower volume tracks at a lower volume, the higher ones at a higher volume, but that's okay. We'll be able to work with that in whatever platform we put it into. So we'll go back here. We've also got our Never to Blame one, which we use that second method to create these tracks, and now we'll show you how we can actually use these in the real world. So first and foremost, if you wanted to stay within iOS, what we can do is actually transfer these. So you can put them onto Dropbox and then send a link. You can zip them up and transfer them that way, or copy them over using iTunes file sharing to a Mac or a PC, which is the last thing that we'll show you, and that's the most useful thing in my particular view. So what we're going to do here is we'll double tap Let's jump over into files because we can't actually do much with these files in GarageBand, but we can in the Files app. So here we are in Files. We'll jump in here. So here are all of our WAV files that we have, and we can simply select these and do what we want like we would any other file on our iOS device. But what I like to do is actually zip them up to make them a little bit easier to manage. So to do that, if I tap Select and then tap Select All, I can share in the bottom left here. We'll tap on Share, and we could just share these normally. We could airdrop them to an iPhone. We could do whatever we want there, but I use the Shortcuts app, and I've got another video which is linked up there and down in the description that shows you this in more detail. But if I tap on Shortcuts, what we can actually do is zip these up. I'm going to tap on Zip, and that is going to grab these files. It's going to create an archive, as it's doing right now, create a zip file with all of these WAV files in it, and then that's just one file that we can transfer over to Dropbox, put it on Google Drive, OneDrive, wherever you want, and then you can email a link to that to someone else. So if you're collaborating or if you've got someone else that's going to mix your project, you can send them all of the files. You can just wait for this, and we'll do that now. We'll wait for this to finish archiving, and then I'll show you where we can save it and then how we could send that off to someone else. And here we go. So yes, that did take a long time because we've got lots of big WAV files here, but we're ready to go. We can then save this by tapping Add, and it's going to save a copy of that zip file, and there it is. It's all zipped up, 368 meg. So yes, that's pretty big, but what we could now do, and you could see where we saved it, we could have saved it straight to Dropbox or Google Drive, or all we need to do now is actually grab this file, we'll go done. Try to tap done. There we go. We could just tap this and drag it over and drop it into our Dropbox, our Google Drive, wherever we wanted to put this file, we can transfer it and copy it. So that is the number one way to get things across. We'll show you the other way with iTunes file sharing in a moment, but let's go back now to our other project because we need to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to use our old friend AudioShare. I talked about this in some previous videos, but it's a great little application, and it's actually going to help us extract out the audio from these files. So we can do this on our PC as well, but if you don't have a PC, grab AudioShare on your iPad or your iPhone, and we will jump in and have a look at this. So what we can actually do is we can open up a GarageBand project folder in AudioShare and actually extract these files. So to do that, we tap on the import button, the little yellow one here in the bottom left corner. Fourth from the right, we go to Document Picker, and then we can actually jump in here to the folder, which is right here. So it's actually my recent here, but if we didn't have it there, we go to Browse, we go on my iPad, GarageBand, and then right at the top, or is it? No, it's sorted by name. Let's sort it by date, like that, and tap on Never to Blame. So it's now going to import that band file. So you can see at the top there, we can tap on that, and it's brought us into this very cool view, which is all of our different folders that are within here. Now, the one that we're interested in is media. We tap on media and look at these AIF files that we have here. Now, they're called merged tracks because I've realized that what it actually brings in is the name of that WAV file. So if we, the name of the audio file. So let's just come back here to GarageBand so I can quickly show you what I mean. You can see here, it's just got merged tracks. So if we wanted to actually have those as different things, we could actually rename this part here, and we could call this whatever we call the other one. So we call this like G1. Then when we did that export, it would have exported as whatever the WAV file is. So keep that in mind, and I'll keep that in mind for next time as well. But for the time being, we have all of these tracks along here. So if we just grab one of these like this, there it is. There we can see the actual track, and you can see we've got the lead in there, and I can't remember which one this is, but let's hit play and find out. Cross the road and never even look one way. So there's our vocals, for instance. We'll take a look at this one. There's my embarrassing bass line that I did, and this one looks like it might be some drums. So they are all in here, all good. So there's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different tracks that we're going to bring in. So if we wanted to utilize these from just within here, we could grab these and we could share these as individual tracks by tapping the share button down here in the bottom right, and then we can share these over. So we can save each individual track straight out of this .band project over into anywhere in our Files app that we wanted to. So just go in and do those. You do have to do them one by one, I believe. I haven't worked out a way to do this with multiple ones in here. Oh, maybe we do this. Let's try this. I've never done this before, so I tapped on the little tick up the top right there. Let's see if we can actually send all of these merge tracks. All right, let's see if this works. We'll go save to files, And once again, we haven't created our own folder like we should have done. We'll just have to share them here in the 6 and 8 stems for now. We'll tap add, and we'll see if this actually adds all of these AIF files over. And AIF is just another type of enclosure for a WAV file. So it's no different. It's still an uncompressed audio file. It's just got a slightly different name. So it looks like that's actually done. Let's just check. Let's come across into our Files app over here. Go to 6 and 8 stems. No, so it's only actually done that one track, so it hasn't actually worked to export unless it's actually merged them all together, which we'll find out. I'll leave that there and we'll find out afterwards. But at worst, if you're still within iOS here, then you can actually at least export those one track by one track and then send those over to your files and then do whatever you want from there. But the easier way is the way that I'll show you. If you've got a Mac or a PC, we can use iTunes file sharing to actually transfer these across, which is what we're going to do right now. So we're here on my PC. I've got iTunes loaded, as you can see, and I've got some folders that I've set up here on my hard drive ready to put these stems in, one for Never to Blame, one for 6 and 8. So if we come over here to iTunes, I'm going to click on the icon there of my iPad, and then I'm going to click on File Sharing over here on the left. And I'm going to click on GarageBand to go into my GarageBand files. And here is my big messy folder, which I need to clean up, full of all of my old GarageBand projects and other WAV files and all sorts of things. But if we scroll down here, over on the right-hand side, we'll come down to some fairly familiar little things. We've got here our 6 and 8 stems, this whole folder, 1.15 gig. That is all of our WAV files that we've just exported there. So these are the first things that we're going to bring across, and then we'll bring across our Never to Blame stems. Now, when you're using a folder like this, sometimes it's not going to work. Most of the time, it won't work to click and drag. So unfortunately, we need to actually use a different option, which is if we scroll down to the very bottom here, we can see here that there is a save button that we have in the bottom right. So we've got that one selected. We click on save, and it will ask us where to save it to. So all I'm going to do is go into this folder here. I'm going to highlight and copy that and paste it into here so that we're in the right folder. I'm going to click select folder. And then at the top there, you can see that it's now copying files from Airhead. So it's copying across over to my computer. So then I'll be able to jump in and look at those and import them to wherever I want to upload them to Dropbox, to iCloud. Why would you do iCloud? Google Drive, OneDrive, wherever I like. So we'll let these finish copying across, and then I'll show you how we copy our .band project and those media files that we saw before. So that one is done and we're good to go. We'll click back here and we'll come into our Never to Blame folder. Now over here, we're going to scroll up because this time we just want to bring across this whole .band folder. So we'll highlight that one. We'll do the same again. We'll come down here. We'll click on save. Let's this time grab this folder, Control C, over here, Control V, and hit enter and select folder. It's now going to copy this whole .band file, but it's actually a folder full of all of those things before. And I actually did another video where I showed what is actually inside a GarageBand .band project, but we're about to see it again anyway, because I'm going to bring it across here onto my PC. Now, if you're on a Mac, you can use pretty much the same process. Run iTunes and then copy over onto your Mac's hard drive any of the files that you want from your iPad. So that is done now. We can disconnect the iPad and be on our merry way. And what we have down here is our files in our folder that we have on our PC. So let's jump in and take a bit of a look at what we have here. So firstly, 6 and 8, we'll double click this, we'll double click on this, and here we go. Let's just bring that into the middle here and stretch it out a bit. So these are all of the files that we got from there, and you can see here they're all just WAV files. If we double click on any of these, let's just grab, say, our piano. We can just double click here and play this as a WAV file. It'll just open our VLC player and it should play that. There it is. So these are all going to be just our individual WAV files. From here, we can copy, we can transfer, we could do what we like with these. In fact, one of the things I like to do, and here's one I prepared earlier, is use my Reaper DAW. So Reaper is a free to evaluate digital audio workstation. I'm actually using the evaluation version here because I do have a license. It's on my other computer at the moment. I haven't transferred it across. But anyway, what we can do is if you have a digital audio workstation like this, we can grab not only each individual file, but let's just grab all of these. So we're going to shift click. We don't want to grab that zip file that we brought across as well, because that was the one where we'd already zipped them up. And now if we drag these across into Reaper or Audacity or whatever other digital audio workstation you're using and release, it's going to say, do you want to put these as a single track or separate tracks? I'm going to say separate tracks. And here we go. It has brought in, and it's going to process, build out our peaks. It's going to process all of these different audio files into my digital audio workstation. And because these are WAV files that use those sections, you can see it's even brought my sections across from GarageBand. And here they are, all 13 of my tracks. Now, I'm going to have to do some, I'll turn the volume down here. I'm going to have to do some mixing here. I have no idea how these are going to be mixed at this point in time, but let's just play a section and see what it comes out like. Let's turn this volume right down and hit play. So it's sounding terrible, yeah, because it has brought everything in at the wrong sorts of volumes that we have here. In fact, what I mentioned about volume before, one thing I forgot is that GarageBand uses auto-normalization, which is why all these waveforms are actually normalized. So forget what I said about adjusting the volumes. GarageBand will do that for you, and that's what we have here. So if I wanted to actually get this sounding right, what I would need to do is go through, I'd probably want to rename these tracks because all of them are going to be called stems and then O2 bass, stems, O3 piano, etc. So it's a little bit difficult to see what each of them are here. But if we just say, let's just solo a couple of these. So if we soloed the bass, yeah, that's our drums. So we could bring in our bass and we could start mixing these back in. Piano might need a bit more. And there you go. So we can start mixing those back in and we have complete control. They're all synced up. They're all aligned. And despite some of the few little naming conventions. So what I probably would do in hindsight is not have 6 and 8 and stems and whatnot. Just rename the project file as the track number and the track name. It's just going to make it easier when you're using it in something like this. But hopefully you can see that that makes it pretty flexible. Yes, it was a little bit of a pain to get all of these out of GarageBand, but now that they're in here, we can actually bring them straight into Reaper and do our thing. Let's put a new project here. So no, we won't save that one because we won't be doing anything with it right now. If we come back to our folder here, let's now this time go over to our Never to Blame. Now this one's going to be a bit different because we're going to have to go in here, go into our media folder here in this file, and here are our 6 tracks that we have in here. Now because we've merged them, they're all going to be lined up and the right length. So what we need to do is the same thing, shift click to highlight them all, drag them over into Reaper or your digital audio workstation of choice, separate tracks, and here they all are. It's going to build these all up, ready to go. If we zoom on in, here is my track. So let's just find where the track starts here. We'll drop the volume down in case it blows us away, and let's hit play. And there you go, we can start mixing that up. But you can see here that right throughout it's going to be all lined up. And when I make other people mad and I throw my fellow humans under buses. And yeah, we'll need to do some mixing around. We need to rename these tracks. As I showed you before, they haven't come across as merged tracks. But as the name, they've just said merged tracks. So might need to do some track renaming if we did want to mix it. But again, we now have the flexibility to do that. We have all of these WAV files. We have them as stems. And that is the 2 different methods that we can use to bring across from our iPad or our iPhone. Doesn't matter if you have a PC or a Mac or not. You can use those other methods to actually put them to Dropbox or Google Drive, zip them up, send them off, send a link to someone via email, or you can transfer them to your own Mac or PC, bring them into any other digital audio workstation. I recommend Reaper. Go to reaper.fm to download this. If you haven't, 30 days evaluation, and then it's only about $65, I think, to buy a license. So super valuable, super good value for money. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and I hope that if you've been wanting to export stems, at least you now know how to do it. You may think, well, I don't really want to do it now. It's actually not that hard to do, especially if your track count's low, and especially if you use that method where you merge those tracks with a low track count, because you get those AIF files, you can bring them straight in and use them straight away. Thanks again for watching. Have you got any tips? Have I done anything here that you think could be done better? I'd love to hear from you. Drop the comments down below if you do have any other comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Hey, thanks for sticking around. We've got 2 more videos linked right down below that you can check out. You can also subscribe to the channel by clicking or tapping on the Studio Live Today icon in the top right corner, or head on over to studiolivetoday.com for even more audio goodness.